You're listening to the Elvis Ultimate Fan Channel podcast, the channel that is devoted 100% to the life and career of the biggest selling recording artist of all time, with your host, Steve Francis.
Hello and welcome to Elvis the Ultimate Fan Channel. A reminder before we dive into this week's episode for you to join me every Wednesday and Sunday for my live stream shows on YouTube, where there is Elvis Chat, Fan of the Month quiz, and my Elvis Song of the Week. My special guest today is Elvis fan Andrew Hyler. Andrew is on the line now to speak to me about becoming an Elvis fan and how an unfortunate series of events brought him to a very dark time and how Elvis's voice literally saved his life. Hi Andrew, and you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate your opportunity.
Now, could you just tell us, for the listeners, obviously from your accent, a lot of people will realize that you're based in the US, but whereabout are you based in the US?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Virginia. I was born in a little teeny town called Iron Gate, and I currently live in Roanoke, Virginia. And I've lived a little bit in North Carolina, but kind of the East Coast of the United States is where I've been most of my life.
Elvis did quite a few concerts in Roanoke during his lifetime.
Yeah, he was here a couple of times in the 50s, and also he came through on train during his Army travels. And then in the 70s, he was here in, I want to say it was 72, 74, 76, and then he was due back August 77. So he kind of enjoyed Roanoke, and I've heard, stories about him visiting the Mill Mountain Star, because we have a star on a mountain that lights up at night, and just little stuff that, he got around and did some tourist stuff so here in the area. So, that connection to Elvis, and the building, is still used. So every time I walk in there for a hockey game or a concert, I can't help but think about Elvis.
Well, you're probably familiar with the film Elvis on Tour, and you know the part. You know the part where the mayor is giving him a floral guitar. Well, I believe that was filmed at Roanoke Airport. It's on his plane, I believe, and so so it featured in Elvis on Tour. Roanoke did.
Yeah, and that's such a great little piece, and he winks at the camera and all.
Now, you weren't initially an Elvis fan, were you? You kind of came late to the party, didn't you, I think?
I did. I was about 16 years old before I finally, the light kind of shone on me. As a kid, my mom was a big Elvis fan, and I found out later on that my grandparents were as well, and every chance she got, she would watch, an Elvis movie on TV. Every time we'd go on vacation, we'd wind up, going to a little museum, or if there was something Elvis related, we'd stop and see it. And I just always dismissed it. Here's this good-looking guy singing these silly movie songs and getting the girl, and I think it was probably a little bit of jealousy, to be honest with you. But yeah, I never made the connection, and I think because my mom and so many others were into him, I kind of bucked the trend and just said, yeah, I respect him for what he did, but I'm not really a big fan, and I never really was exposed enough to all of his other body of work to really give him a fair shot,
And then in 1997. It was on the 20th anniversary of his passing, wasn't it, that you kind of, as you say, the spark finally lit?
Yeah, it finally happened. It was very odd. School hadn't started yet, and my life was football. So at the time, I was, going to practice and preparing for the football season, and they were, commemorating the 20th anniversary on VH1 television here in the U.S., and the 68 Comeback Special was coming on. So I just went in my room, closed the door, and, sat down, and I watched the entire special. And by the end of it, I was very impressed, and his, whether it was his presence, his voice, the emotion in songs like Memories and If I Can Dream, I felt something changing in me. I was like, wow, this really is not bad. I'm like, this is pretty awesome, actually. And, I've always had been a music lover, but I never had really found that artist or that band that I could say, oh yeah, that's my music. I just kind of loved music in general. So when he showed up that night on television and I gave him a chance, I was so impressed. And I thought to myself as the credits were rolling, I'd love to see something else. And then all of a sudden, my wish was granted, and VH1 said, okay, up next, Elvis Aloha from Hawaii via satellite. And wow, when that came on, 2001 started up, and then the opening riff, and he walks on that stage in that American Eagle jumpsuit, and Charlie puts the guitar on, and he goes to the mic. The rest is history. I mean, I was in a trance for the next 60 minutes.
He's just so damn cool, isn't he? Basically,
it was. It was just amazing. I was sitting there watching something, and I was like, it's flashy, but it's not too flashy. It's just him. It's not a group. It's not backup singers. I mean, backup dancers, things of that nature. It's just him and his group, and the jumpsuit, the rings. But at the end of the day, all that played second to that amazing voice. I mean, just the voice is what just captivated me. And songs, My Way blew me away. And then a few songs later, It's Over was, I just love that song, still do to this day. And then What Now My Love just blew me out of the water. And by the time we get to American Trilogy, I'm sitting there with goosebumps all over, thinking to myself, I've got to get to the store. I've got to buy this man's music. It was almost like love at first sight, but in a musical standpoint, I was like, man, not only is he a great looking dude, is this a great performing and charisma. I mean, I could feel his charisma watching it on the television screen.
That's right.
So, and then on top of that, the quality of the music, the sound, and his voice, and everything combined, it finally clicked. And I was like, wow, this is someone that I've got to listen to and learn about, and this may be the guy. And luckily it was.
I mean,
I'm very grateful to VH1. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. They used to do that. They used to do that every January the 8th and August the 16th, but they kind of stopped doing it now, unfortunately. They used to have an Elvis Day. I remember they used to have an Elvis Day.
Yeah.
As well.
They were doing it regularly for quite a while.
Yeah. But, I mean, if I was to watch Aloha from Hawaii again tonight, I would still get those same feelings, the goosebumps and everything, even though I've seen it so many times now. It never fails to move me. Another favourite, actually, I know we've mentioned My Way, It's Over, What Now, My Love, and, of course, American Trilogy. Actually, American Trilogy was probably one of the best ones he ever did on the Aloha, I think. But I've also got a soft spot for his performance of I'll Remember You that night. That was just such a great performance that night.
My mother loved that rendition and that concert as well. And after he hits that, note, or I guess changes the note, and he kind of looks over and smiles.
Yes.
My mom would, oh, that is so sexy and that's so amazing,
Yeah.
And it's always been a special song in our family. That performance would, knock me out too. And even, some of the more regular songs, whether it be Burning Love or Can't Stop Loving You or whatever, the voice just constantly kept me in that trance, and I wanted to hear more. I mean, I never had another artist do that to me.
Yeah, there was always that little bit of interaction between him and the backup singers, the Sweet Inspirations and J.D. Sumner and the Stamps Quartet. He was always kind of glancing over at them. You can see it a lot in Elvis on tour as well. There was always that little repartee between them, wasn't there? And of course, you can't take your eyes off him. I'm sure they were just the same, same as us.
No. And I got the impression, even with Aloha, and him obviously being a little bit more polished and a little bit more nervous, you could even tell there he was just simply enjoying himself.
Yeah.
No matter what, he liked what he was doing and interacting with the group, like you mentioned, and all forms, where he could be with his friends, this group of fellow musicians, and put on this amazing show for everyone. And I think it was just enjoyment. And I always felt like I could read that in him, from the early shows all the way to 1977, I think there were moments where he would give you that smile, whether it be to an audience member or to James or, a backup musician or whatever, and it would make you smile.
Mm. Yeah,
So he had that ability.
His uncle Vester actually said that he believed there was two Elvises. There was a private Elvis, and then there was an Elvis that was on stage, and he couldn't believe the transition in his nephew. From the Elvis he knew just driving through the gates and talking at Graceland, and then when he first saw him live on stage, he couldn't believe the transition. And I believe that Elvis was the happiest, especially in the 70s. He was at his most happiest when he was on stage.
Oh yeah, I really agree. And from everything I've saw and all the research and books and CDs and etc. I really feel like wow, that's where I almost feel like that's where he could breathe the easiest, and that's where he was able to kind of de-stress as much as he was concerned about putting on an amazing show for his audience. I really feel like that's where that was his therapy, was getting on stage and performing.
Yeah, he lived for it, I think. Now,
yeah, I really do agree.
The next 2 years after the shaft of light hit you and you realized what you were missing, what happened? What happened then from 1997 to 1999?
Well, I started pretty heavy into start collecting his music. I started off buying every cassette and CD I could, even before I had a CD player, and was collecting his music, listening to everything I could, learning about Elvis. And though I was no expert, I really was, starting to finally get the full picture from the Sundays all the way to, 77. And there wasn't, anything that I didn't appreciate, whether it was, music soundtracks or the concerts or studio recordings, etc. So I was extremely, I became a true diehard Elvis fan during that period of time. But in my personal life, outside of, learning about Elvis and stuff, I had a lot of things drastically change personally for me between 16 and 18. And I'm glad I had Elvis because, it was a lot going on. In winter of actually, I guess I'd say, it was late 97. I'd gotten injured playing football. I played for my high school team. And I was a junior in high school at the time, and I had scholarships were being talked about, and colleges were coming to see me play, things of that nature. And my dreams were always to, hopefully get a scholarship, play football, and maybe even go professional one day. And if I wasn't going to do that, I'd always considered following in my father's footsteps and joining the U.S. military and becoming a United States Marine. So that was kind of my dreams, and that's, what I was very focused on when I wasn't listening to Elvis or taking private time. It was football and the future. Mm-hmm. And we were in the playoffs, and I go up for an interception against the other team, and as I'm coming down, the other receiver, he comes back towards me as I'm intercepting the ball, and he hits me in the back of the neck and back of the helmet with his helmet. And I don't think it was intentional. It was just the wrong place, wrong time. Mm-hmm. But I knew something had happened, and I lost consciousness, and I woke up about 3 days later, and they proceeded to tell me that my neck was broke. A real shock.
Yeah.
And it, at that age and everything going on, I just never foresaw that. I thought I was indestructible, and I just thought, okay, nothing, I can do anything out here now. I'm Superman. I got colleges looking at me. I had a little bit of an ego, I'll admit. And so it was humbling, but also, a really life-altering situation. And not to dwell on it, but just to kind of give you the final result in that, I was told that the fracture would never really, it would heal, but I would never get full function of the neck back. Mm-hmm. And the disc in the back above the vertebrae that was fractured was out of place. And though I went through rehabilitation and things of that nature, it would never be 100% again. And that really upset me. And I told my mom and dad, I said, if I can't play football, and if I'm going to have to sit here with a halo hooked to my head, a device to, keep your head straight and still while the neck heals, I don't want to go back to school. So my mom and dad understood, because they knew my love and my life was football at that time. So, I homeschooled, finished high school kind of early. Unfortunately, my relationships with my friends deteriorated, and my girlfriend and me, we broke up and things of that nature just because we were in two different worlds. I was at home going through rehab and trying to get well while they were living the typical, high school life. At home, taking my medication and just simply trying to figure all this out. And then as 1999 came around, I was still in the middle of rehab and healing. And of course, something like that, when it happens, not only does it affect you physically, but at that age in particular, in my opinion, it really affects you emotionally and mentally as well.
And
so,
you were they gave you quite strong pain medication as well, didn't they? Didn't they? I think.
Yeah. It's very odd. I know they give you something very strong, but yet anything they give you like that, you can definitely be dependent on. And I don't want to draw any comparisons to Elvis or anything, but they gave me Demerol. At first it was needed, and I was very thankful for it to, take the pain, some of the pain away as the healing process continued. But I found as 99 approached and my neck was beginning to heal the best it could, I should say, that I was beginning to use the Demerol to treat my emotional and mental state more than I was my physical. And that's when I knew, and looking back, Steve, I see that. At the time, I didn't really, I'll be honest with you. But I was really, I think, at a point where I was using it more to just escape, real life.
Yeah.
So what would I do? I'd go, to the pill bottle, say my neck was hurting, and take another pill. That's kind of a vicious circle. And like I said, at the time, I wasn't aware of it. My mother and father did the best they could, but, obviously they were taking care of me and working and, just life in general. And then on one dark, gloomy day, we went to the doctor, and it was kind of the end of the rehab, things of that nature. And he proceeded to tell me, you are going to have most of your function back. Things are looking good. We know you're still having some pain. We know this is taking its toll mentally, emotionally, lifestyle-wise. And he said, I do have to let you know, Andrew, that unfortunately you'll never be able to play an organized sport again. He said, due to the pressure and hits, the next one, might take you out. He's like, no team would even take you insurance-wise, to do that. And I'd already spoke to him several times, and he knew my second option was, join the U.S. Marine Corps. And he said, I hate to be the bearer of bad news all in one day, but he said, the military will not accept you. He said, you're already broken, and the military doesn't like, broke toys. They don't want to be in a situation to where they have someone come in who's already injured, and then they exacerbate that injury, and you hurt yourself worse. It just that they're going to turn you down just because of the issues with your neck. So, and then all of a sudden, both of my plans were gone in one day. Not only was I never going to play football again in an organized way, but I couldn't join the U.S. military.
This was obviously the breaking point. That day was the as they say, the straw that broke the camel's back.
It really was. Hearing those two things out of the doctor and realizing that they were true, and seeing my dad's face and my mother's face when I looked at them, because I thought, okay, maybe the doctor's wrong here, but when they kind of confirmed that, yeah, this is what the situation is. And don't get me wrong, Steve, I'm very grateful now that I was able to get full, use of my legs back and walk. And though I still deal with arthritis and neck pain, for the most part, I got myself back physically. And I did attempt later on down the road to join the military a couple times. And of course I was turned down. But yeah, that day was the one that really hit me in the gut. And then after that straw, if I had any left, I'd say about 4 or 6 months later, kind of out of nowhere, to be honest with you, I was an only child. I was kind of, I guess, comparing it to Elvis, I was a little bit of a mother's boy, a mama's boy, I guess you could say. And my mom, was a very, wonderful lady, but she'd gotten to the point to where her and my father's relationship, was really just co-parenting me. So she decides, okay, Andy, you're turning 18 years old, to take on the world and stuff. I've done all the mothering. I will, always be your mother and continue to mother you, but I need to make myself a priority for a little while. So she decides that her and Dad are going to divorce, and she leaves the home. And so now I'm sitting there, with all this news, still recovering from the neck injury, emotionally and physically, probably more emotionally at that point. Mm-hmm. And then, not really knowing what my future had in store. But then my very little small family unit of me, Mom, and Dad was being dissolved, and she was leaving the home. So at that point, I was just lost. I mean, I really was lost.
And you made a decision.
Wasn't nothing planned, nothing that really had ever crossed my mind before or anything. I did not see a future for myself. And at my age and in the situation I was in, I was looking not necessarily to escape, but I was really looking, I didn't want to hurt anymore. I guess that's the best way I can put it, Steve, is I just simply did not, I wanted to do anything I could for emotionally and physically to take the pain away, take the hurt away, whether it would be the neck, Mom, not realizing the goals that I had set, during my teenage years, all that hurt, losing my girlfriend, not really being associated with my friends anymore because of the injury. And again, I not meaning to directly connect to Elvis, but I kind of understand how that loneliness and that solitude can eat away at you. It really can. So, and obviously I was suffering with depression and things of that nature and had yet to be treated for it. So I got to a point, one night, Dad was at work, and like I said, Mom had been gone for a little bit, and I was having a bad night. I'll just put it that way. And the tears, the pain, I was reliving everything. It wasn't necessarily pity, but it was just like, wow, this is not what I want. This is not what, I don't know if I can survive this. So this is where, the Elvis part really comes into play, because one night, like I said, real bad night, and Dad was at work, and I go into his bedroom, and I'm crying, and I guess I'm at the low point. I've hit the rock, and I've hit the bottom of the barrel, however metaphor you want to use. And I'd gotten a device out of the closet. I had loaded that device, and I walked back in my room, and sitting there, tears pouring down my face, and I'm sitting there on my bed in my bedroom, and left hand, I'm holding the device, and I'm thinking, all right, maybe I should leave. Maybe it would be better if I move on, from this world.
Yeah, let me just stress, this wasn't, you weren't thinking about doing it. You were definitely going to carry this out.
I was definitely, my intentions were, yeah. I think when you're in that situation, and I'll just speak for myself here, you never know until, I guess, that moment, if you were 99 or 100%. But I can say, yes, I was definitely 99%. I wanted out because I wanted to ease and take away the pain.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to hurt anymore.
Yeah.
So that was definitely my intention. Me going and getting the device and loading it and sitting there and knowing Dad wasn't home, knowing Mom wasn't around.
Yeah.
It's not that I really had planned it. It just the timing all seemed to kind of match up emotionally, circumstantially wise, to where this seemed like the thing to do.
And then, and then something really, really strange happened, didn't it?
Very, very. And I don't know what, I still to this day, I don't know what possessed me to do it, because I'll be honest with you, as much of an Elvis fan as I was, he wasn't necessarily on my mind that night, I'm sitting there just in a state of absolute depression and pain, and getting ready to do something absolutely just, foolish. And I had my CD player set beside my bed on my dresser, and I already had a CD in, so I hit the power button. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what CD I had in the tray. So I hit the power button, and I'm sitting there, and I think I'm subconsciously maybe trying to delay myself, trying to give myself a reason not to do something stupid. And I was like, all right, let me, hit the play button. So I hit the play button, and what's in the tray? It was Elvis's album, That's the Way It Is. And as I'm sure most fans know, the first track is Just Can't Help Believing, the B.J. Thomas song. And I didn't press any other buttons, didn't play with the stereo. I hit play, I hit power, I hit play, and I sat there. And for some reason, the CD did not go to track 1. It went to track 12. And that's when, and I've heard the song multiple times before, but this night, Steve, I listened. That was the difference. And I wish I had a better way to put that, but I actually listened to this song. And it was Elvis singing Bridge Over Troubled Water, his studio master from 1970.
Yeah.
And it started playing, and I started listening to it and listening to his voice and the words and what he was saying. And, so many Elvis fans, and I do believe it's true, you feel like Elvis is singing just to you.
Yes.
You could be in a crowd in a Coliseum, and you feel like he's singing that song just to you. And that night, I don't know why or how, but he was singing just to me that night. That song, those words. And I'm still sitting there, bawling, crying, device in hand. And I think I counted a total of 13 times that I hit the repeat button. And every time I hit the repeat button on the stereo and listened to the song, I was feeling a little bit better, a little bit maybe hopeful. I noticed the tears had dried a little bit. I noticed me thinking about the words, thinking about Elvis's life, thinking about, and I guess I should also, credit Paul Simon, because it is a beautifully written song.
Yes, it is.
But, Elvis's delivery and the passion and the emotion and his connection to my soul, or however you want to put it. And that last line, as we all know, I will ease your mind. And it was actually happening. And it was just unbelievable. I mean, I get goosebumps telling you, because I to this day, 22 years later, and I'm sitting here and I still don't even understand how it went to track 12. But I proceeded, long story short, to listen to the song about 13 times And by the end, I'm sitting there, and the crying has stopped, and I've heard Elvis more than just hearing a song. You know, it really sung to my soul, my spirit, however you want to put it. So I stood up, and this was almost subconscious. I don't recall making this decision, which is very odd. But I hit pause on the CD player. I stood up. I walked back in my dad's room. I opened up a case. I put the device back in the case. I unload, put those back in their case, in their little box. And I stick them 2 items back on my dad's top shelf in his bedroom closet. And I proceed to close the door, and I exit his bedroom. I go back into my room, and I sit there for a few minutes, and something's happened. Something's changed inside of me in this period of listening to this song and listening to Elvis's voice sing it to me. So I'm at the point to where I was like, you know what? I think I need some sleep, and I need to wake up tomorrow and see what tomorrow brings. And I hit the play button, and Just Can't Help Believing starts.
Wow. After it starting at the track 12, when you were...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And I hate to read into that, and I hate to say, oh, this, you know, I'm not a person, you know, necessarily that believes in luck or signs or anything. But whether it was, you know, destiny, or whether it was, you know, a by chance situation, being able to hear that song, and then oddly enough, I hit the play button again, and it's Just Can't Help Believing. So I put myself to bed, and I listen to the album. I fall asleep to the album, and I wake up the next day. And, you know, obviously since then, 22 years of life, you have your ups and downs and your daily battles and struggles. And, you know, life wasn't heaven the next day. But in all sincerity, 22 years later, I've never thought about that again. You know, doing something like that to myself, or being in that position. And anytime I'm in a hard situation, whether it was when I've lost a parent, or my marriage ended, or I'm battling something in my life, whether it be health-wise or mentally, emotionally, etc., I always turn to Elvis. You know, it could be any song, any album. It didn't have to be, you know, That's the Way It Is, or Bridge Over Troubled Water. Though it is still honestly a go-to for me, and very, very special to me, more than I have words for. But yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for Elvis that night, I wouldn't have my boys and my grandbabies, and probably wouldn't be here on the phone with you.
Well, as the title of this episode says, you know, Elvis Presley saved my life, and he did. Without doubt, he saved your life.
Yeah, he did. He saved my life and then some. And what was great about it is he saved my life, but then with being able to continue to research and listen to him, not only was he a passion, a joy, and a love in my life, and I enjoyed his music, but I was able to take that into eventually it being a part of my career as I became a journalist, and I wrote things about Elvis and did little pieces on him off and on and things of that nature. So every aspect of my life from that moment on Elvis has been involved in. And, you know, throughout the years, in all the ways I can, and even the one reason I'm talking to you today is, you know, I want to be able to give him as much thanks and as much credit as I can. I've always wanted to honor and thank him in any way I can, by sharing his legacy, his music, you know, not pressing it upon anybody, but anyone who's open to it, yeah, you know, hey, come listen to this, or let me burn you a CD, or whatever the case may be. And when I had my second son, we named him Garen. And obviously Elvis's little twin brother, who sadly was stillborn, was Jesse Garen. You know, Garon. so my youngest son, that's his name, Garen. So that was one way, that a very small way of me trying to honor Elvis and his legacy. And then actually just this past year, my oldest son, Gabriel, and his wife decided I was going to have a granddaughter. They were going to have a little girl, and we were very excited about it. They didn't tell me. They hadn't asked me about it. I had no idea. They just said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to name her Presley," and they spell it differently. But
just tell me how it's spelled.
It's Presleigh.
Yeah, that's quite unusual, but it's nice. It's a nice turn on the name.
They said what they want to do was kind of put like a feminine aspect on it, but yet still, make sure that, it was Presley, and they call her Lee or Lee or Presley or whatever, And she's right now, she's, I think, about 7 weeks old.
That's nice.
So she's still a little thing, and she was born January 5th, actually.
Ooh, it was very, very close to Elvis's birthday.
3 days away. I tell you, we almost saw it.
Yeah.
If that would have happened, that would have really been insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely in the same week of his birthday. And so when they did that, I thought that was great. Whether it was partially because of Elvis or to honor him or me or whoever, or just because they liked the name.
Yeah.
I really thought that was awesome as well. So it's kind of cool to have family members that not only have I been able to share Elvis's music and trips to Memphis and things of that nature with my sons, but I've been able to share names that were involved with Elvis, et cetera, to try to continue to keep Elvis in our lives daily.
You've been to Graceland, obviously.
Yes, sir. I have been 4 times.
Oh, wow.
And I loved all 4, but I'll be honest, in 2014, I took both my sons. It was just me and my 2 boys. And that was probably my favorite trip, because they got to experience not just Elvis and Graceland and all that encompasses that, but also Beale Street and the blues and the amazing food and the atmosphere and just all of it. And that was a trip that, until I'm an old man in a rocking chair, I'll definitely is one of the highlights of my life.
Yeah.
Not just because I got to go, but because I got to share it with my 2 boys.
Yes, very special. Did you make it to Tupelo and Sun Studios and all those other things as well?
Yeah, we did. We made it. We actually drove down. I think it's Highway 51. I might be wrong, but eventually we got down to Tupelo. Didn't spend a whole lot of time down there, but I definitely wanted them to see at least the exterior of the house and stuff. And we got down there and visited. And then in Memphis, we kind of did do the full tour in Memphis. We hit Stax and Sun Records, and we were only there. I think we did a 4 or 5 day trip, but I want them to get as much as they could in, because that's a trip financially, at least in my situation, that's hard to make. You can't make it every year. It's an expensive trip, I think, for anyone. Yeah. So, especially when you have 2 boys you're feeding.
Yes.
In particular. Yeah. So, that was, I tried to get as much in, and I think it's really stuck with my sons. And maybe on different levels, but they're both Elvis fans, and they respect and love Elvis, not just for what he did for me back when I was 18, but just for what he was as a man and as a performer and a musician. So I'm very grateful that I was able to do that for them. But I try to make it a point from this point on, really from that day when I was 18 years old to the day today speaking with you, to just do anything I can to honor him and share music, legacy, or just simply, say, hey, thanks,
Did you meet anybody connected with Elvis?
I have come across a few. A lot of them has been online, where I've gotten lucky, and I've been able to email with people like Jerry Schelling in the past, things of that nature, and ask some questions and all. But the one person who I actually got to sit with, and we actually had dinner together, and it was totally a spontaneous situation, was Charlie Hodge.
Oh, Charlie, yeah.
What a wonderful guy. I mean, you can't say enough amazing things about him. And he was performing with a show there at Memories Theater in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and me and my mother and father had went down there, for vacation and decided to go see the show because of Charlie. And, it was a good show and all. And we were on the very front row. And my dad had a very unique sense of humor. And he started kind of bantering back and forth with Charlie, almost kind of like how Elvis and Charlie would banter back and forth with each other. And I'm sitting there kind of watching my dad and him bounce jokes off each other and tease each other and say little things back and forth. And they made each other crack up probably 100 times, just during this hour show. And I'm just sitting there in awe. I feel like I'm just an audience member watching Charlie Hodge and my dad in concert. It was kind of hilarious. But surprisingly afterward, we met him and I got to shake his hand and we spoke to him and all. And Dad did something I never thought he'd get a yes on. Dad's like, "Mr. Hodge, can we take you out to dinner?" And, Charlie said, "You know what? I haven't ate." So he got in his car and we got in ours and we drove down to a restaurant there on the Strip in Pigeon Forge. And we were very privileged and lucky enough to have a meal with him. And we probably sat there for 2 hours and talked Elvis.
Wow.
And told jokes and things of that nature. And I was still a teenager at that time. I think I'd recovered enough from my injury while, no longer wore a neck brace or nothing, but I was still, in that process. And that was such a treat for me, because that did take my mind off of it. And it was a great memory, a great moment. And what a wonderful man, just his sense of humor and the way he spoke about Elvis and his love and friendship with him. I'll never forget it. I'll put it that way. I mean, he really left a mark. And I was always, I tell people, as much as I'm a fan of Elvis and that, I've always knew Charlie was a part of, the picture from the Army days to the end. I'm also a fan of Charlie Hodge, not necessarily because of what he did with Elvis, but just because he was such a humble and real human being and was so, approachable and was so willing to talk about Elvis. Dad wasn't paying him or nothing. We were just sitting there having a meal, having a good time and talking about Elvis Presley. And that's a very, sweet memory that I really treasure today.
Yeah, well, Charlie actually got Elvis through a very, very tough time. He just lost his mother. He was having to sail overseas to Germany. And there's stories about, Charlie being bunked with Elvis during the journey over there. So he kind of, and I think Elvis appreciated that all his life from when he was in the army right through to the very, very end, just what Charlie did for him when he was at a very low point as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's odd with meeting Charlie and spending that little bit of time with him. You're just very at ease with Charlie. You feel like you can talk to him, you can say things. Obviously, my dad felt like he could joke with him and tease him about being short and stuff like that. It was just Charlie had he felt like family. He felt like a friend automatically. And, not many people have that ability. So, and I do remember speaking with Mom and Dad, on the way back home after our vacation and meeting Charlie and all that, that's a very special man. And I really understand why Elvis kept him close and why they were so close because, I think Elvis knew good people when he met them and, was able to get to know them. And Charlie was definitely, even though, like I said, I never, spoke to Charlie after or nothing. And obviously, several years later, his health got a little rough and he eventually passed. But I'll always treasure that. And he was really a very unique and wonderful man, and a very open man when it came to himself and Elvis. He'd be the first one to, tell a joke on himself or be self-deprecating or whatever. But he was just a joy to be around. So I definitely understand why Elvis kept him around. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Might be a tough question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Yeah. If you could speak to Elvis one time, what would you say to him?
Wow. Yeah. Steve, I've probably asked myself that question 1,000 times. And I guess in the earlier days, I had different answers. But I guess I was able to go to Elvis today. Me sitting here now, 22 years from the night, that dark night where he did save my life. The first thing I would say is thank you. And then the second thing I would tell him is, even if they weren't around for me to introduce, hey, I have a son named Garen. I have a granddaughter named Presley. And I want you to know that you're not only remembered still, and more importantly, we celebrate you and what you left behind and everything you've done. And it almost goes from not asking him a question as much as I would look at Elvis, and he was human. We all know the ups and downs of his career and a lot of his personal life, because of different persons and circumstances. But what I would have loved to be able to done for Elvis was, I don't think I could ever return the favor, but I would have loved to have just looked at Elvis and said, hey, E, what can I do for you? Is there anything I can do for you? Whether it's wash your car, something, it could be something silly or something small or Sharon, let me go out and buy a few CDs and give them to friends or something. What can I do, to honor you and to thank you for what you've done for me and for my family? And that's a question I would have, and knowing Elvis, he would have probably said, oh, there's no thanks needed. And, there's not a thing I need, son. But I would really, look for a way to thank him. It's very hard to put into words, I guess, but just some way to be able to go, you know what? Hey, whether it's in life or whether it's, and now that you've been gone, I've got your back. In as much way as I can. I'm no one special or famous, but I've tried my part to, share them. And I think in the ways I've done it with my boys and et cetera, I think generations to come, at least in my family, will know who Elvis was. They'll know his music, and they won't just know how he helped me, but they'll know how important he was to millions of fans in the world. And that's what I just continually try to do. And that's why when I thought about, your podcast and stuff, I thought, wow, if there's any other way that I can say thank you to Elvis, any opportunity I have, I better jump on it. Yeah. So that's why I reached out like I did, because I was like, this story deserves to be told, because I want people to know that Elvis doesn't have to be here for him to positively affect your life or your mood or your situation. And I expect I'm not the only one that when they are having a hard day or having a hard time, they put on Elvis music or a movie or whatever, and are able to kind of escape into him or have him ease their mind the way he did mine 22 years ago.
I know there's a lot, I can vouch for that as well. I know there's a lot of fans that do say that they, Elvis's voice, Elvis's movie, watching a concert on television, it lifts their mood. No matter how bad their day might be, a little bit of Elvis makes it better. It really does.
It does. And I even heard, Paul McCartney say before, you can put on an Elvis record and you just feel happy. And, I not necessarily exactly agree, but it definitely soothes your mind and your soul. I'll put it that way. Even if it's a heartbreaker song or a ballad or something about loss or something. There's something about it that soothes you, whether it's the music, whether it's the voice, a combination of both, or whether the soul and the intention that Elvis had when he sang the song. It reaches you the way, in my opinion, no other artist has ever reached a fan base.
It was the same for him with gospel music, because he's gotten down on record as saying that it soothes his mind when he's singing it.
You know, you're right. That's a great way of putting it, because I guess gospel music for him, you know, whether it was other artists or music that he had recorded, was really kind of his safe haven and his go-to in times of trouble. And I think he would be so surprised to know that his music, whether it be gospel or you know, his other recordings, are that for so many other people. You know, I think he would definitely have a big smile on his face if he was, you know, if he knew that one. That's for sure.
Yeah. Andrew, I think I speak for a lot of people listening now to say I think you've been very, very brave to come on and share this very emotional journey that you've had with us.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. And like I said, I just appreciate the opportunity, because I just feel like I need to make every effort, you know, until I'm gone, to celebrate and honor him and give him the credit he deserves. And if anyone else is having a hard time, you know, obviously there's 1,000 different ways you can handle the hills and the valleys in life. But the way I found, and I think other fans have as well, is put on an Elvis record or listen to him or spend some time reading about him or something. And it definitely can bring you some peace and some solace. And I think that's the biggest part of his legacy, is the gold records are.
Yes, I agree.
I really do.
Very well said. Thanks, Andrew, for your time. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, and thank you, Steve. I truly appreciate it, and I love your podcast, and I try to tune in to all your videos as much as I can. I'm a huge fan of your channel. I really am.
That's very kind of you. Thanks very much.
And I really enjoy them, so thank you. You know, they're really, you know, I think I speak for all the other fans of the podcast, where it's enjoyable, and being able to interact with you, you know, via the chat and things of that nature is really fun as well. And debating and talking about Elvis is just fun.
When fans get together, it's just great. It's like one big family.
It is. We have a connection, even if we don't know each other. It could be different countries, different worlds, race, color, creed, doesn't matter. If you're an Elvis fan, everything will be all right.
It brings everybody together. As you say, it doesn't matter who you are or where you are. That common bond is Elvis.
Exactly. And, you know, if the world had a little bit more of that, I think it'd be a little bit better off.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. 100%.
Hopefully we'll all be able to get out and get back to some normalcy. And maybe, you know, one of these times we can, you know, as in fans, can all start getting together again and going to Graceland or, you know, just spending time with each other. I think that'd be a great thing for the whole community.
Thanks once again to Andrew for sharing his very emotional Elvis story with us. I think you'll agree when I say what an incredible story it is, and once again proves the influence Elvis Presley still has on the world, even today, 44 years after his death. Don't forget, you can join me live every Wednesday and Sunday on YouTube for my Elvis live streams, when a prize is up for grabs in our Elvis Fan of the Month quiz. Until next time, stay safe, and I hope you can join me next time for another episode from Elvis the Ultimate Fan Channel.